Hey, everybody, and welcome. We are on the fourth tip in this mini series with Jeff Witt, talking about design tips you need to know in 2021. And tip 4 is called develop multiple opportunities to be whales, not just combat. So Jeff, could you first describe what does that mean? What do you mean by multiple opportunities to be whales?
So right now, when we think of whales, we think of powerhouses in battle, right? The strongest players, people that are very hard to beat. They're the ones in like Forex games, capturing the wonder and holding it off. In RPGs, always topping the events, topping the arena charts. And there's definitely a lot of money to be made to make people very good in combat. And especially with PvP events driving players to be very competitive and spending, it's definitely made a lot of games money. The problem is that not all players like the PvP. If you look at metrics for any RPG or strategy game, the PvP rates for players, at least from what I've seen, have varied from like 50% to 70%, but that's still a good chunk of players who don't like the PvP. And I've always felt that there's those players who don't like the PvP, they still want to be rock stars. They still want to feel like they are contributing to the success or failure of their guild, if it's guild content, or they want to be on the top on some sort of other event. And so I think there's a lot of money to be had for game companies who could figure out features and designs that can make players who don't like the PvP still feel like there's something to strive for and ultimately spend to be the best at.
Are you talking about these different kinds of roles in the context of like a guild line, or just speaking of gameplay?
Generally, this is more guild, alliance, social play, where the social pressure of helping your guild win will drive you to try and be the best. So yeah, strategy and RPGs are the main focus of this. But I feel developers can, if they design their guild events right, can create opportunities to try and create rock stars that, in the realm of Forex games, rock stars who help generate resources for their guilds and fund their guilds rather than having to always be ones who are going through combat, which can be create a lot of anxiety for players who don't like the PvP. But if there were systems where they could spend a lot of money to really excel at funding their guild or protecting their guild or anything else that will help their guild succeed, there may be opportunities to increase monetization from those events. Clash of Clans is a good example of sort of an approach where you do allow players to succeed without forcing them to PvP. Like, yes, you have to attack other guilds' bases, but half the battle is just creating the best defense base for your own that the other guild members can't beat. I don't know Clash of Clans metrics, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a good chunk of players who just focus on base defense and don't really attack other players much at all, and especially competing in the ranking system. So developers who specifically design for players who don't like the PvP, that there's a lot of money to be had there if people who will be happy to be whales can spend on something that doesn't force them to do something that they don't like to do, which is PvP.
Right. Are there any other games besides Clash of Clans that we could look to try and to have as an example of different types of roles? It seems like kind of maybe like during the early days, there was some notion of this in terms of even back to Rage of Bahamut and like Holy Wars, or I forgot what they were called. And to your point about this notion of attack and defense, but it doesn't seem like a whole lot of games have really pushed this notion of specific roles like a resource type person, an attack person, a defense type of person. But I don't know if you have any other examples, or you think this is more of an opportunity that somebody could tap into.
Yeah, I mean, Holy Wars is another example, like you said, right, where you have, a wall of sorts that while it's up, you do less damage, and so knocking it down helps you succeed. That's kind of similar, right? Like for players who don't like
Okay.
the PvP, having PvE targets that matter is an example of that, right? So I think some games, like especially in the RPG space, they've started playing around with it. You have raid maps that have places on them where knocking it out will help the overall raid. But I would push developers to take it a step further, have these PvE targets be almost vital to the success of the guild, so that it's not a question of do these have to be knocked down in order for the guild to prevail? They absolutely do. And so then you could at least have a certain segment of your guild be focused on just getting those down, while those who like the PvP will focus on the PvP. But I would also just take it a step further. Have a sort of input cost for battles require very rare materials, and have those players who enjoy more the economics of the game, have those players be able to be rock stars and create a lot of those for their guild to use, and try to monetize off of that as well. Look at all the different types of players within your game and make sure that you have enough systems to make them all super whales, and not just combat oriented roles.
Okay. I think we're done, right? That was tip 4 of
Yes,
4.
tip four.
Any final words of advice before we close out this series?
Don't take baby steps. Take larger leaps in your innovation, but also make sure that you understand why you are innovating. Like, be able to explain doing this will impact that. If it's a live game, try to use player data to support that decision. If it's a game in development, try to see how something like this has worked similarly, and why you taking this innovating step should work the same, if not better. But always explain why you're doing something, and if you can't explain or defend it, maybe you shouldn't be doing it.
Right. All right, great. Well, thanks, Jeff. There you have it. Tip 4 of 4. Thanks a lot for the words of advice, Jeff. And until next time, everybody, catch y'all later.
See you later.